Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTGO Traders. My name is Taryn. Let's talk about Ravnica Allegiance previews for January 4th. That's a Friday. So yesterday's video was going up super quick, and it was a lot of stuff to cover. Today's going to be a similar amount of stuff to cover as well, but a lot of people were asking for the face cam, so it's back. Hi, this is my face. There you go. Let's jump into some cards, guys. We've got a lot to unpack today. A lot of really great Gruul stuff, a lot of really great Rakdos stuff. Just Ravnica Allegiance is looking hype, honestly. So first up, we're going to put them over on here to the right over here. Or over this way? Yeah, over this way. Rakdos Showstopper is the card I missed yesterday. A 6-mana 6/6 flying trample. Whenever the Showstopper enters a battlefield, flip a coin for each creature that isn't a demon, devil, or imp. Destroy each creature whose coin comes up tails. This is really fun. It feels like a card that was kind of designed with MTGRNA in mind. Obviously, there are not a lot of demon, devils, or imps in Arena as far as in Standard right now. There are a few demons, but that's about it. But Showstopper still seems really fun. A 6-mana 6/6 flying trampler is a huge bomb in Draft and Sealed. You're not going to see it that much, though, because, of course, it's a mythic. But in Standard, it might see some play in sideboard text, because it is a huge bomb for your sideboard. Maybe some play in Modern, not really sure. But I feel like the real place it's going to shine is going to be a commander deck because it is a legendary creature, and that seems hilarious. We have Pestilence Spirit as our next card here. This is a 3-mana 3/2 Spirit, has Menace, Death Touch, and instant and sorcery spells you control have Death Touch. What? Okay, let's just turn Electrickery in Modern into a board wipe. That's great. Whoa! All right. Pestilence Spirit is very powerful in Draft Sealed and even in Standard. Probably going to see way more play in Standard than you'd think, especially in a Rakdos deck. If this is going to be sideboard tech, bringing in game 2 against a creature-heavy deck list, you bring in something like Fiery Cannonade or whatever. It may not destroy the board, but if you have the Spirit on the battlefield, it's going to destroy the board because of Pestilence Spirit. That's ridiculous. Holy cow. Love this card. Next up for us, we have End-Race Forerunners. This is a 8 mana. Can't count there. 7/7, Vigilance, Trample, Haste. It could have been a 7-mana 7/7, but whatever. It's a rare here. Whenever it enters a battlefield, other creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain Vigilance and Trample until end of turn. This is a standard version of Craterhoof. It's really fun, really powerful. Going to be a great game ender for you in Mono Green Stompy for Standard, and it's probably going to see a lot of play in Draft and Sealed if you get into it as your rare. This is going to basically put you in Gruul if you're going to see this, or maybe even Simic, but I feel like this is just a straight up Gruul card for you for Draft and Sealed. But for Standard, definitely going to be in a Mono Green list. This card is Bananas, B-A-N-A-N-A-S. Next up for us, we've got Prime Speaker Vannifar. I think that's how you pronounce it. A 4-mana 2/4 legendary creature, Elf Ooze Wizard. Yeah, this is a Simic, so it's just kind of throwing everything in there for you. It's also a legendary, so it can be a commander. You can tap it, sacrifice another creature, search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrificed creature's converted mana cost. Put that creature card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. This is literally Birthing Pod on a creature. Amazing. Really love this card. It's also a 2/4, so it's going to be able to survive a lot of removal. I do think the one thing that does hold this card back, though, is that it is a 4-mana 2/4, not a 3-mana 2/4. Feels like it should be a 3-mana instead of 4-mana, but I guess that's a little too pushed for our liking. However, this is a great Simic card for you. Not that great, honestly, in Draft and Sealed, where you have kind of a few cards to choose from for like your pools, but it is a Mythic, so you're not going to run into it that often. For Standard, this card seems amazing. We'll see this kind of do a lot of play with that. And this will probably just be a commander card forever. We'd really love to see this card in Modern somewhere, but I don't really know where yet. If you guys know, let me know in the comments down below. Next up for us, we have Carnival and I think Carnage. Going to pull this up really quickly since it is sideboards. There we go. Carnival is a 2-mana or hybrid mana, black or red instant. Deals 1 damage to target creature or planeswalker and 1 damage to that permanent's controller. And Carnage is a 4-mana sorcery. Carnage deals 3 damage to target opponent. That player discards 2 cards. This is fun. It's sort of like a Blightning, not as powerful, obviously, because it's 4 mana for the Carnage there, but still quite powerful for the format for Standard. This is also an uncommon, so you're going to see it quite a bit in Draft and Sealed. So if you're in Rakdos and you see Carnival and Carnage, it's quite powerful, and it's going to see a lot of play in Draft and Sealed, and probably will see some play either in sideboards or main boards of Rakdos Burn. Either way, really excited for that card as well. We have a card here I need to translate really quickly, so let me pull this up on the screen. We have High Alert here. This is a 3-mana enchantment. Each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Creatures you control can attack as though they didn't have Defender, and you can also pay for an untapped target creature. So this is really good with the legendary dragon we have in Core Set 2019. They're really great with that. Lots of defenders in the format right now for standard, so this will be really fun. I feel this will be a really bad card for you to get into in draft and in sealed, kind of like a dead card almost most of the time. You can definitely untap creatures for 4 mana, so there is that. But that's a lot of mana to do that, so I'm not really sure if this will see much play other than maybe a standard deck for the Legendary Dragon in M19. Arcades, for those who are wondering, that's the name I'm trying to think of. Next up for us, we have another split card. This is an Orzhov split card. This is Canonize to Consume. Canonize is a 2 mana instant here. It's an exile target card from a graveyard, draw a card, and Consume is a 4 mana sorcery. Target player sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. You gain life equal to that creature's power. This is 1 removal for graveyards, and then 2 removal for the board states. Really good in draft and in sealed. Again, it's an uncommon, so you're getting into it quite a bit in draft and sealed. This is also quite powerful for standard as well. I do think that Consume is going to be probably really good in like a more Orzhov or Esper control list, because it doesn't necessarily target the creature, it targets the player, which is really fun, so it can really kind of go against a Carnage Tyrant quite well. I do think Canonize is not that powerful, kind of like a Cremate, but again, 2 mana, not that great. 4 mana, pretty good. And that's kind of how the split cards kind of work out most of the time, or how we've seen them kind of work out in this format so far. But for draft and sealed, this card is perfectly fine. Might see some sideboard standard play if they're in a control list. Next up for us, we have a Rakdos card. This is Below the Carnarium, a 3 mana sorcery. All creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. Exile all creature cards from all graveyards that were put there this turn. If a creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Holy cow, this is an amazing board wipe for black. We really haven't gotten something this besides like maybe Golden Demise for black like this, but being able to exile stuff really does mean this goes a long way against Golgari Overgrowth or Golgari Reanimation, whatever you want to call it, in standard at the moment. This is also very good for draft and sealed, getting rid of those 2/2 bears and 2/2 bodies that are on the battlefield, and there are a lot of them in this format as well. Below the Carnarium is amazing. Can't really say much else about that other than it's going to be a really great card in draft and sealed, going to be a great card in standard, and really nowhere else. Next up for us, we have our first kind of great card for us for Orzhov. This is Pitiless Pontiff, a 2 mana Vampire Cleric 2/2. You can pay 1, sacrifice into creature. Pitiless Pontiff gains Death Touch and indestructible until end of turn. Wow. So Orzhov tempo might be a real thing with this card and the Adanto Vanguard being in the format right now in standard. I really like this card a lot. I do think this is also a card that might go really well with the Tesla we talked about yesterday, as well as just having a great kind of trigger here for us for Afterlife in the format as well. And of course the art on this card too is really cool as well. Really love the line work on this particular piece. Next up for us though, we have another card. This is Sela, I think that's how you pronounce it, Bellhaunt. This is a Orzhov card, 2 white, 2 black, so this is kind of going along with those themes we talked about in the previous sets. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card and you gain 3 life. It's also a 3/4. I really wish this card had flying. It feels like it should have flying. If it was a 3 mana, or a 4 mana 3/4 flyer that made your opponent discard a card and has gained 3 life, this would be amazing. Otherwise, it's just fine. It's not amazing. It's not great. It's not terrible. You know, it's just kind of in that middle of the range, like, it's a 5 out of 10. It's perfectly usable. But man, I really wish this had some sort of evasion, like Menace or Flying or something like that. It's got white and black. Having maybe a Flying first strike would be too good probably, but I mean, I think this card is still okay for draft and sealed. Not going to see any kind of standard play. Next up for us, we have Gutter Bones. This is a 1 mana 2/1. This is a Skeleton Warrior. It enters the battlefield tapped, and you can pay 2 mana and return Gutter Bones from your graveyard to your hand. Activate this ability only if an opponent lost life this turn. So this is sort of a Rakdos card for us, but also quite good in the Afterlife decks as well, since it can be a sack outlet for the Pontiff we just talked about. I do think Gutter Bones is quite good. I'm not so sure it's going to be that great in draft and sealed. It is a rare, but it's a 1 mana 2/1, and I would feel kind of bad if you got this as your rare in your draft pool, since it doesn't really do that much and doesn't really impact the board state. It can come back turn over turn if your opponent does lose life, but again, they have to lose life, and they're not always going to do that in some situations. So not that great in Draft and Sealed, a lot better in Standard, and this feels like a card that might be broken potentially in Modern as well, if you have the mana to sack for this and return it back and all that kind of stuff as well. So, and then of course you can also do it on your opponent's side of the field too, because it says active this ability only if an opponent lost life this turn. So that means your opponent's turn, your turn, whatever. So this can definitely come back to your hand on your opponent's instep, which is very good too. Next, of course, we have a card that has some really good memeable art. This is Smothering Taif. This is a 4 mana enchantment. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2 life. If the player doesn't, you create a colorless treasure artifact token with tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Mana pool is not on there anymore. I just say that out of habit. This card is really powerful. A 4 mana enchantment is kind of expensive, so you probably won't see it too much in Draft and in Standard. Probably won't see this at all in Modern, but you will see it a lot in Draft and Sealed because it is a rare and it's really powerful in the white Orzhov lists. So kind of fun there. And of course you get mana if your opponent draws a card, and that can be every single turn. Your opponent does not want to pay 2 mana to make us not get a treasure, so this is kind of worth it for that. Where I feel like this card is going to shine the most is going to be Commander, where this is just going to be a card where you draw you gain lots of mana turn over turn while all of your other opponents are drawing cards kind of around the table. That's really fun for that as well. So highly doubt your opponent's going to pay that too, so you don't get that treasure, but really fun regardless. This is really taxing, especially against a control list or a heavy card draw mechanic list in Standard as well. So a little too expensive for Standard, honestly. Probably won't see it there. Probably going to be more of a Commander All-Star, but still really fun in that format as well. Next, of course, we have Zhur Goblin, or Zhur? I don't know. Love the art on this regardless. This is a Gruul card. It's a red and a green 2/2. It's a Goblin Berserker. It has Riot. And that's it. It's an uncommon. You know what? This card is great, and it just has the Riot. It just has the keyword on it. That's how good Riot is. You could put Riot on a 2/2 and make that card good. A 2 mana 2/2 with haste is good. A 2 mana 3/3 with nothing is fine. Like, this card is good. I don't know. It's so amazing how good Riot is just by itself. It turns a bear essentially into a 3/3 or a 2/2 hasty, and that's amazing. Cannot wait to play Gruul in the next upcoming format. Man, I'm gonna have so many Jund and Gruul lists on this channel you guys don't even know. Next, of course, we've got Rampage of the Clans. This is a 4 mana instant. It's destroy all artifacts and enchantments. For each permanent destroyed this way, its controller creates a 3/3 green Centaur creature token. This is really interesting. I'm not so sure this is going to be used that much in Draft and Sealed. Feels like a card that needs a lot more setup than Draft and Sealed can offer. Probably more for a Commander deck or more for a Standard deck, maybe. I feel like Rampage of the Clans really needs a lot of treasures to work appropriately for your side of the field, since you want to destroy your enchantments, because whoever's, enchantments or artifacts get destroyed, they get the creatures. And because of that, I feel like Rampage of the Clans is perfect for a treasure list in Standard. Probably going to see a lot more play though in Commander, honestly. Some crazy artifact list for sure, where like you create a bunch of treasures, you create a lot of artifacts or whatever, and then you just destroy them all for 4 mana, and then you get a 3/3 army. That seems like a lot of fun for Commander, honestly, and that's kind of where I'm going to see this card see the most play. Next, of course, we have Frilled Mystic here. This is a 2 green 2 blue, just like again with the other cards from Ravnica and Guilds of Ravnica. It's got a creature, or it is a creature. It's an elf lizard wizard. Why are these names? Why are they the way they are? It has flash, and when it enters the battlefield, you can make counter target spell. Wow, this card is really powerful. I wasn't expecting to get a creature counter. We had Mystic Snake a long time ago, which is similar to this, but this card is super fun. It's a 3/2, so it's not going to be that impactful to the board state. Of course, Mystic Snake was a 2/2, so this is a little bit more powerful, which is fine as well. So very, very good. Mystic Snake is a lovely card. Great card for like modern stuff, modern drafting and stuff like that. I feel like it was in, Masters 25 the last time we saw it, I feel like. Frilled Mystic though, super fun. Glad to see something like this back in Standard, honestly. And this kind of gives Simic a really good leeway to have a creature, also have a counter, and have something that is in the Simic colors that has flash as well. So good card all around. Cannot wait to play Simic. Lots of good stuff in basically every single guild so far. Except kind of, I want to say maybe Simic is the least powerful right now, but that card really pushed up just a bit there. We have Bankrupt in Blood here, a 2 mana sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this card, sacrifice 2 creatures, draw 3 cards. this card is potentially crazy, especially because of all the Afterlife stuff we have in the format. I'm not so sure this will see a ton of play in Standard, but just because of all the Afterlife and all of the like die triggers we have on all the cards in Standard at the moment, Bankrupt in Blood feels like it's a good card. It is a sorcery speed, it's not an instant, so that makes it not as good, which means that it won't be as impactful to the board state. So that is my only kind of caveat there, where I think it's a good card. It's going to draw your opponent lots of stuff, or it's going to draw you a lot of stuff. But, you know, it's sorcery speed, so you have to do it on your turn. I do think, however, in Drafted and Sealed, if you do get this into your Orzhov list, this card is bonkers powerful, and you're going to really love it, as it kind of just gives you a ton of card advantage. Next up for us, we have Blade Juggler. The art on this card, amazing. This is a 5-mana 3/2 human rogue with Spectacle for 3, and when it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to you and you draw a card. This doesn't really mean like it goes off if you just cast it with a Spectacle cost. Some of these Spectacle cards you have to cast it with Spectacle for the ability to kick off. So a 5-mana 3/2 that gives you a card, pretty good. A 3-mana 3/2 that draws you a card, amazing. So Blade Juggler is probably one of the more premier cards at common to be a good card to kind of show off what Spectacle can be for Drafted and Sealed. I don't think this will see any kind of standard play. It is a 3/2 for 3 that draws you a card and pings you for 1, so that's interesting, but I don't really think that's going to see much standard play. Probably just more for Drafted and Sealed. Again, love the art there on this card. Cannot wait to play into that too. Next up for us, we have Electrodominance. This is an X and 2 red mana instant. Electrodominance deals X damage to any target, and you may also cast a card with a converted mana cost X or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. What is happening? This card has Is It written all over it. The art apparently shows off an Is It Wizard too. Holy cow. Okay, so you basically burn your opponent or burn a creature for 3 and get to cast something for 3 mana from your hand for free. What? This card is crazy. This has Commander written all over it, of course, but this card is also very powerful in Standard, and I don't think we'll see, or I do think we'll see this card in Draft and Sealed be a huge bomb to an opponent's board state as well. So turn 5, they tap out, they do 3 points of something and they get a 3/3 or a 3 mana something. Or let's say it's like turn 8 and they tap 8 mana and get a 6 drop on the battlefield. I think that's crazy powerful. Electrodominance feels amazing, and it's also instant speed too, so keep that in mind. That's also the big thing, is that this is also an instant speed spell as well. So it's got all the good things going for it. Seems completely busted, and while Is It just keeps getting new toys every single set, and I'm really happy to see that happening, but it's all in red and it kind of scares me. I don't know if this will be a card you necessarily want in an Is It list. Maybe this is a card you want into a mono red burn list, where you get to burn your opponent for 3 and you get a Goblin Chain Whirler. That seems really scary at instant speed, and I really hope that doesn't happen. But let's go on to another card here. We have Smeltward Ignace. This is a 2-mana 2/1 creature elemental. You can pay 3, sacrifice it, gain control of a target creature with power 3 or less until end of turn, untap that creature. It gains haste and activates this ability only anytime you can cast a sorcery. So this is interesting. This is Enthralling Victor in Standard again. Really fun card. I really like active treason effects in Draft and in Sealed. This is not going to see play at all really in Standard, but in Draft and Sealed, like these kind of active treason effects are really fun. Can really, you know, change a match, especially if an opponent has a giant like 6/6 bomb and you don't have anything. You know, they just played that. Then you play this. Or you played that the previous turn, they play their big bomb, and then you just take control of it. That's really fun. It also, because this card has to have the sacrifice ability to go off, you definitely have to have the 5 mana up for the turn, or, you know, of course, you can keep this on the battlefield and kind of make sure your opponent stays off their biggest creature while you just continue to crack in for points. So, like it for that. I think it's a really fun Gruul card, personally, but, you know, I'm not going to see any kind of play probably outside of that. Savage Rhythm is a 3-mana enchantment. Creature spells you control, there we go, can't be countered, and non-token creatures you control have Riot. What? This is Fires of Yavimaya, basically, but with riots, and so powerful, so good. This is amazing. I would pay 4 mana for this, and it would be fine. But 3 mana for this uncommon is ridiculous, very powerful. Gonna see a lot of play in Standard, gonna see a lot of play in Modern, probably as a fun Gruul card. Gonna see a lot of play in Commander. Gonna see a lot of play in every format ever. This is really fun for Gruul. I'm so glad we're getting these kind of enchantment-wide effects for Gruul again. They're so much fun to play with. They do make Gruul really powerful, and Riot is a very powerful mechanic as well. Now, I did have this posted on the MTGO Traders Twitter where it said creatures you control are for Riot, but it's technically non-token creatures. That makes sense to me, but I couldn't, the translation that I was using through Google was not giving me the non-token, it was just saying creatures, so that's the case for that. But either way, Savage's Rhythm here, super fun, cannot wait to play this honestly, and Standard seems incredibly powerful because Riot is an incredibly powerful mechanic. Next, of course, we have Biogenetic Upgrade. That literally sounds like a Yu-Gi-Oh card. It's a 6-mana sorcery. Distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures, then double the number of +1/+1 counters on each of those creatures. So you get to basically put, two +1/+1 counters on, the different creatures, which is interesting. So it goes really wide. It's a sorcery speed spell at uncommon, so not very powerful as far as like how it should be for maybe standard play. Feels like a really good card for draft and sealed to kind of go really wide in a Simic list or a Gruul list. Really like it for that specifically, but not really a fan of this card per se in standard. Really need to see what they can do with the adapt a little bit more once we kind of see what else is in the set. But Biogenetic Upgrade, a great bomb if you are going wide in draft and in sealed. Next up for us, we have Titanic Brawl. That's an amazing name there. 2-mana instant. This spell costs 1 less to cast if it targets a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. So this is interesting. It's kind of like a reverse Savage Stomp, because Savage Stomp is 2 less if you target a dinosaur. It puts a counter and then they fight. So this is just 1 mana, so it's basically the same as Savage Stomp, but you have to have the counter already on it and then they fight. That's fine. I really love these Godzilla's type effects where it's like, and then they fight. That's really fun. But this is really only useful in a Simic list or a counter-based list, maybe a Hardening Scales list in Modern. Probably more of a card for just draft and sealed for just good removal in green for us. Something we kind of need anyway for that format too. So really love the name of this card. Really love the art of this card as well, and think the ability is just okay. It's just all right. Next up for us, we have Quench. This is a 2-mana instant counter target spell unless its controller pays 2 colorless. This is the closest we've gotten to Mana Leak in several years for standard. Wow. A lot of people are calling this Mana Weak. I still think it's really good. I feel like it's probably a fixed Mana Leak. A lot of people are saying, well, this is just a better Censor. I completely agree with that. But even Censor saw play in a lot of the control decks when it was available in standard for us in the Almond Ket block. So Quench feels like a very powerful card for us in the format. Feels like it's going to be really seeing a lot of play in those Azorius and Jeskai and, Esper lists for control. Just feels like it's a counterspell for the first 3 turns of the match, and that's really powerful most of the time. Now it's going to be able to, be a little bit quicker against the Boros matchups too, and the mono white matchups. So that's really what we want for those control matchups, because we can't just keep boarding in Essence Scatters from the sideboard. We got to have a main board spell that's fast enough to combat those turn 1 spells or 1-mana spells, and Quench can definitely do that for us. And wow, this is going to be kind of scary, guys. It's one of those cards where it's borderline making control too good for the format, and I really hope it doesn't. But we have a ton of other powerful cards within the format right now, and within this set specifically, that I feel like it's probably going to be fine in the format. There's just a lot of good Gruul stuff, a lot of good Rakdos stuff, and a lot of good, of course, Azorius stuff as well. So we'll see what happens, but Quench, very powerful. High pick for me in standard, high pick for me in draft and sealed if I'm in Azorius, or even Simic, because it can, again, counter anything unless your opponent pays 2. So this is basically what Syncopate wants to do whenever you're trying to cast for 4, which is, for 3. So we have Grasping Thrall here. I almost said Troll. Grasping Thrall. This is a 5-mana creature Thrall flyer. Whenever it enters a battlefield, it deals 2 damage to each opponent, and you gain 2 life. It's also a 3/3. This is fine. The Seb McKinnon art on this is really fun and really interesting to look at as well. All of the Seb McKinnon art you've seen today in previous cards from the set are fantastic. We don't deserve him. He's too good of an artist. Grasping Throw, though, is really good. I do think it's really fun for drafting and sealed as a top-end finisher or top-end bomb for you. It's not really that powerful in the air, but it is a flyer, and it does mean your opponent is going to lose some life, and you are going to gain some life. So that's really good for advantage stuff for draft and sealed. Not really going to see any kind of play in standard, I don't think. It's just a little too expensive for that particular format. But for draft and sealed, this card is perfectly fine, and you're going to see it see play for sure. Next up, we've got Burning Tree Vandal. Oh, man, so close to Emissary. It's a 3-mana creature human rogue. It has Riot, and whenever this creature attacks, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. So for Gruul and for Rakdos, this is kind of powerful in Draft and Sealed because it gives you a really good way to kind of come back from a match if you're down some cards, or if you're trying to kind of cycle through and you're getting a lot of land. This is a really good way to do that. It's a May ability as well, so just having a 2-1 with haste is fine, or a 3-2 cracking in is also fine. Again, super fun, super powerful. It's just a common as well, so these Riot mechanics, just a common Riot card is super good. I think this card is perfectly fine for Draft and Sealed, but yeah, not going to see any kind of standard play. And the last card for today is Angelic Exaltation. This is a 4-mana enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, it gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So this is basically Exalted, which is interesting. Very cool. I really think this card is very powerful in Commander, or maybe Standard as a sideboard tech card for lockdown decks against like a Boros aggro deck, maybe like that, something like that, or mono white aggro deck. There's always these scenarios where, you know, Healer's Hawk is the only creature that can attack in, and Angelic Exaltation kind of makes it this situation where you have a lot of creatures on the battlefield, but your Healer's Hawk is the only one attacking in. If you got 5 creatures on the battlefield, and then you're attacking in with your Healer's Hawk, well, it's a 6/6 now hitting in, and you gain 6 life. So that really can turn the tide in a battle. So I think this would be really fun for best of 1 stuff in Arena. Also really fun for Draft and Sealed if you get into a really low to the ground strategy for that format as well. I don't really think it's going to see much standard play, but maybe some like sideboard stuff. Not exactly sure just yet. But those are all the cards for today. Lots of stuff to cover, lots of stuff to go over. As always, guys, let me know what you think in the comments down below. What was your favorite today? There were so many good ones. I feel like the Savage Rhythm is probably my favorite. That's the 3-mana enchantment where your creatures can't be countered and they also have Riot. That is bonkers crazy. Really can't wait to see that kind of play in the format as well. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like if you like it, subscribe to the channel if this was fun to you, and of course hit that bell to be notified whenever a new video on the channel goes live. We have drafts and like deck techs and all other kind of stuff hitting the channel every single weekday, every single week. And yeah, I love you guys. And if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter at my name, which is in the comments down below. Or you can check out other places like my Twitch channel, all that fun stuff as well. But love you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.